that you've ever had. You think I'm psycho, you think I'm gone. Tell the psychiatrist something is wrong.
What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about Smile 2. About to embark on a new world tour, global pop sensation Sky Riley begins to experience increasingly terrifying and inexplicable events. Overwhelmed by the escalating horrors and the pressures of fame, Sky must face her dark past in order to regain control of her life before it spirals out of control. Well, geez, I remember when the trailers for the first movie that came out, and I immediately thought it was hot garbage. I thought it was just a studio throwaway movie that they were just trying to turn a profit off of. So I ended up skipping it altogether out in theaters, and later on down the line, I started to hear positive things about it. I started to hear that there were some suitable jump scares, that there was a plot with conceptual perspective of one's mental health. So that statement alone was enough to have me intrigued. And so once it started streaming on Paramount Plus right away, I checked it out and it really blew me away. With the massive success of that first movie, you know that the studio wanted to expedite a sequel right away. Continuing where we left off, I was really hoping to see what we were going to do with Kyle Gallner's character now that he was the next one in line to carry out the smile curse, and also going along with the information that we already know with him. And then I also wanted to know more about this entity. So were we heading in a direction where we were going to get to know its origins, or were we going to get closer to how to possibly defeat this thing? And you know, like, what more could you warrant another follow-up? So once we got confirmation that Naomi Scott was going to be our lead and what her character was all about, I kind of had an inkling of where they were going to take this. Starting out with the positives, not only did writer-director Parker Finn return to the scene of the crime, but a lot of his technique, his skills, and his vision has actually improved as a filmmaker. I mean, the budget is significantly bigger than the last movie, considering the production design and also the set pieces of horror that they're able to execute on a larger scale, especially in compared to the short film, Laura Hasn't Slept. You can tell that there are some very niche camera angles and shots that are just very skillful, very confident and fluid. I also admired the 180 spin on our final girl's profession. I mean, whereas the first movie we have Sosie Bacon as a psychiatrist, she's very observant, and here we have Naomi Scott, who is the global pop sensation. She's under the public's eye the entire time, and I found that very interesting, and also an indirect influence to Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue. Now, if you haven't had the chance to check out Perfect Blue, I highly recommend that one, and Black Swan if you really dig in what Smile 2 has to offer. The opening sequence of the film was definitely a showcase of the director's talent. The singular tracking shot was just an incredible choice in order to kick off the suspense of the movie, and I can only imagine the opportunity that Parker Finn would be given if he were to direct an action thriller someday. Now, as much as I praise those first 5 minutes, I'm just a little confused of how the movie proceeded forward, because it's a little bit of a plot hole, but it went against the rules about how this curse works. The world of Sky Riley was just beautifully immersive and fully realized. I absolutely admired the amount of work that went into building out Sky's career as well as her personal life from past to present, like the music, the videos, and a lot of the relationships between friends and a lot of the people that surround her on the daily routine. Naomi Scott was really committed, and just she knew what needed to bleed off screen, and that was a broken character in the public's eye trying to make a full comeback. And I gotta say, she really worked her ass off. I mean, I remember seeing a lot of the behind the scenes and like interviews with Naomi Scott about how she just went into learning the songs, about dancing around the songs. She just doing all that before she did a lot of the character stuff. And that was just really impressive. I mean, a lot of that choreography, a lot of those lyrics. I mean, almost every track is a banger if you actually had the chance to check out the soundtrack. And it really eclipses the talent and the performance that Salika Shyamalan did in Trap. Speaking of Naomi Scott, this has got to be the best performance she has ever given amongst her entire filmography. I mean, her efforts in 2017's The Power Rangers, as well as 2019's Aladdin, or 2019's Charlie's Angels, has not prepared for the 110% that she's able to deliver here. And my God, she's really good. And I gotta say, her performance as Sky Riley is just very broken and fragile, that you really get to unveil a lot of her traumatic past involving addiction. For over a third of the feature, she is just on a heightened roller coaster of emotions, expelling anger, fear, humor, sadness, and vulnerability all in one swoop. And I swear, if there was an award winner list of female performances in a horror film of 2024, she is definitely a solid contender. We also have Rosemary DeWitt, who plays Sky's mother, and although she may come off very dismissive to her daughter's mental health as well as her episodes of distress, you kind of understand where she's coming from. I mean, her mother is also her manager, and she does her best to try and uphold her image in the public eye. And I gotta say, even trying to cancel a big world tour, a concert at the very last second, is a very catastrophic lawsuit. The predicament between the two are very reasonable. I mean, mother-daughter shit. We also have the delightful talents of the return of Kyle Gallner. We also got Lucas Gage, Dylan Galula, and last but not least, Ray Nicholson, aka Jack Nicholson's son, who has given the creepiest smile of the entire movie. And he's not even in the movie that much. I swear, he must have asked his dad, "Hey, Dad, can I practice doing the same creepy ass smile you did in The Shining? I need to perfect it for the movie I'm coming up. I'm gonna be a big star. This guy got his own poster." The sound design was just as vital and effective as it was in the first movie, especially when it comes to bracing yourself for an upcoming jump scare. If the image on the screen doesn't get you, the sound will hit you like a defibrillator. The deaths, the self-harm scenes were somewhat a little bit more gory than it was in the first movie. I mean, not on the same level as Terrifier 3, but they were definitely not afraid to mix a little VFX work and practical effects to get a little bit of that torn up flesh look, just a little bit of bone. Getting into my negatives, now I've had my issues with product placement in the past. I know that some movies have done it a little better than others, but in this case, it was clear as day that Voss Water was paying the bills, and they were able to steal like 8 minutes of screen time every single time that Sky was either stressed out, dehydrated, or just plain thirsty. I mean, every single time that happens, just it whips out like a supporting character. There are also elongated sequences where a lot of Sky's reality began to blur of what's real and what is not real. And I know that the first film was able to share a few of those sequences in the past, but they were very, short and very, like more of a gimmick. But in this case, they would retcon like 15 minutes of story, and a lot of things that were happening began to kind of just throw things off balance and, just seemed very inconsequential to what was happening towards like the third act, especially. And I just completely disengaged. I also wish that Kyle Gallner got more screen time in this sequel, and if you did pay attention to the trailers, you kind of know what happens to him, and that sort of disappointed me. I mean, I love Sky as a main character, especially what she's able to do in this one, but I just feel like we were just retreading a lot of the same beats, a lot of the same story points, and what we were already going through in that first movie, that we don't really get to learn a lot more information about this entity or just, moving the plot forward, just the same old stuff. Overall, I do have to disagree, and I would have to say that this movie is not necessarily better than the first film, but is rather neck and neck of what it set out to do. And I think that the third act was just completely wild, especially with the ending that they chose to kind of go into. And I'm just dumbfounded at how they're going to continue this, how they're going to make a third installment happen. I am also very curious at how this particular blockbuster sequel is going to catapult the careers of writer-director Parker Finn and starring lead Naomi Scott. I mean, this particular second chapter was flawed, but it was an ambitious spectacle nonetheless. Well, all right, guys, that's all I got to share about that movie. Go ahead and check it out on the biggest screen as you can while it's still playing in theaters. I'm Jaren Banawag, and I want to thank you guys again for taking some time out of your day to hear me talk some movies. Look forward to more reviews, and I'll see you guys at the theater. Take care.
I'm so